Well, joining us now on Book TV on C-SPAN 2 is Martha Johnson. Martha Johnson, in the past, what have you done for a living?
Oh, I've done a lot of different things. About 2/3 of my career has been in the corporate world. I've been in business, large and small, automotive, architecture, consulting, and about 1/3 of my career has been in the public sector, the public service. I worked all 8 years for President Clinton in that administration, and I had a couple of years serving President Obama. And so it's been a little bit of everything, and it has given me, I think, a real understanding of large and small organizations and their cultures and their effectiveness and performance.
What was your last job with the federal government?
My last job with the federal government was as the administrator of the General Services Administration, which is a massive infrastructure organization, about $90 billion and in scope and size, and we handled real estate, IT, travel, charge cards, supplies for the government, across the whole government, executive, judiciary, legislative branches, as well as state, local, and relief work, tribal. So it is the epicenter of a lot of what government performance is about, and that was my job. It was the best job in the world.
In a sense, it's kind of the back office of the...
It is. We serve the government, and our goal was to help government perform better. And we were enabling that in a number of different ways through innovation as well as products and services.
When did you leave the GSA?
I left the GSA 2 years ago when I resigned. I resigned in the face of an Inspector General report that was about a conference in Las Vegas, which is what everyone remembers. And it was a conference that had some various indiscretions and some poorly executed contracts and some excessive travel. And it became a flashpoint, and I think it was quite a political flashpoint. And in the wake of that report, I resigned.
It was in an election year?
It was very much the beginning of an election year, and one of the major candidates was a major businessman and a management person. So the storyline at that time was to be sure that the president really understood how to run a government, and I was managing one of the largest organizations around government performance.
Martha Johnson, when you say you resigned, do you mean you resigned?
I lost the support of the White House, and I chose to resign. There was a number of meetings that I had with the White House in which they were trying to understand what had happened, what the scale and scope of it was. And as we continued to have those discussions, I got to the point where it was obvious that the White House had withdrawn its support. And you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know when your boss has withdrawn his support. You pretty much figure it out, and I offered to resign.
And your new book
Yes.
that we want to show on the air, On My Watch, Leadership, Innovation, and Personal Resilience.
Yes.
You kind of detail that last day in office at the GSA. What was that last day like for you?
The last day was personally a very sad day. I was in mourning, but for most of the day I couldn't show that because my resignation was very sudden in the afternoon. And I was concluding things and signing some letters and orders, but when I resigned in front of the senior staff, it came very suddenly. And I simply said to them that I had chosen to resign, and I sent a letter to the president. And I left the room. I turned the meeting over to my chief of staff, and I left the room, went downstairs, got in my car, and drove home. And by the time I got home, my email was about blowing up with all sorts of people extending themselves to me in just a wonderful way. It was quite a day of both loss and a sudden network of support. It was a story I wanted to tell about how in the buzzsaw of Washington politics, there's a human story behind that, and it's a terrific story, a career story, a personal story of lessons learned, and of resilience.
What would you have done differently with regard to that GSA conference? First of all, did you know anything about it? Did you know what was happening?
It was planned for at least a year before I actually came into office. So it was that was one piece of the data. We knew of it because my deputy had requested an investigation of it because she had heard a story in the bathroom, you know, somebody saying something about the conferences. She thought, oh, we need to kind of find out more. And that investigation went for 15 months. So we were 15 months. We were aware of that because we had requested the investigation, and we were waiting for it to come forward so that we could decide how to respond. And I think that's a little bit of the dilemma, the due process of an investigation. When you've asked for it, you need to wait till it's done. You don't act precipitously. So there were those kinds of due process and optics issues, so that finally when it came out, I knew pieces of it and I knew something about it, but the formal report was delivered to me about a month before I resigned.
Did you, in that month, do anything with that report?
Oh yes. We were running through first our own review of the materials. An inspector general can come in and say a bunch of things, and it's important for us to validate and understand those things. And we also, so I had a war room set up, and we had gone about instigating some disciplinary action around some of the people that had been involved. But the government is about due process, and these things don't happen like that. So part of, I think, what happened was the storm clouds of politics were insisting on a more action and calling for a head to roll, even as the process was unfolding. And that was the political buzzsaw once the media got hold of it in Congress.
As the head of GSA, do you agree with the fact that you should have resigned
That is one of those questions that will haunt me forever. I did say in front of the Congress that I will mourn for the rest of my life the loss of this job. It was a fabulous opportunity, and we were doing wonderful things. And importantly, I did not resign because of all the innovative work we were doing. It was not because we were taking risks and trying new ways of helping the government perform better. It was another issue that brought this to the front. So importantly, I want to say you should not succumb to risk. The risk of innovation is important to do, and it's not something leaders should be afraid of or worried about. They need to take calculated risks and move. And we were doing that, and that is not why I resigned. I believe the White House, in its various calculus, which I wasn't particularly privy to, felt, who knows what all that was all about after all those meetings, but they simply did not want to continue their support, and that was something that I heard loud and clear.
How did you hear that?
Oh, I was in the meeting with Jack Lew, the chief of staff, at the last of the series of meetings, and he basically was expressing the president's concern, and the real concern that if the government is going to be operating well, the people that set the rules need to set a platinum standard. And it was inside that I could hear what was being basically requested.
Did you ever meet with the president or hear from the president throughout this process?
No, I did not. And it was largely handled by staff. It was all handled by staff. I did not hear from the president.
Do you think that's appropriate?
I don't know what's appropriate. In many ways, part of my story is that I'm not a political animal. I'm an executive management person, and I have to say my hat's off to the Obama administration for inviting me to play a serious role in the performance and management of government, not policy, not program, but in how it works. And that's where my expertise is, and that's where perhaps that's what I do, and the politics and the campaigns and the various issues around who's on first in Washington. I was able to avoid a lot of that at GSA because it is a management organization, but I ran into that buzzsaw.
Do you think that's kind of a negative, not to understand the optics necessarily of the politics?
Oh, I think that I had very, very competent staff that understood the optics. And I think we were all taken for surprise. I don't know that this is one that could have been completely foreseen, because relative to other scandals and the size of the organization and so on, this is something that the process should have taken care of. So that part of it, I think, was maybe a little overblown. I believe that had I stayed in office, we could have done some great things and it would have been a huge benefit, and we lost that chance.
Martha Johnson, as you've been watching the Eric Shinseki affair play out, he's resigned now from his position. What's been your thoughts?
Well, a couple of